Hello and welcome. Today I wanted to share with you what it is I do in my spiritual healing circle and answer a couple of questions. I also get asked a lot, like, um, you are a grief coach. So, how is it that you work with trauma clients? And a few other questions that I get asked um, fairly often. So, I thought I would come on and just share a little bit about what I do and why I do it. And I'm sure maybe even a couple of bunny trails or so. Anyway, Spiritual Healing Circle. Let me tell you a little bit about that. That is it's like a group coaching membership, I guess is the easiest way to explain it. And what I do is I have a group of people um, and twice a month, we hop on a Zoom call and I pick a topic for the month. And the first session, we typically focus on awareness. I do a teaching about that subject. And then the second session is about equipping you, giving you tools that you can use, not only for today, but tools that are timeless, tools that you can um, pick up and use again at a later time. Life happens. We all get stuck, and and not even necessarily if we want to get stuck, but these are tools that can help us just to simply continue growing as a person and continuing to improve areas in our life that we want to improve. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just um, you know solely focused on trauma, although I work primarily with people who have been abused in church organizations or, by some sort of spiritual leader. Um, and how I, as a grief coach, work with people who have been abused and traumatized is simply because, well, I've been there too, and I have a few other certifications as well. But um, I stumbled across uh, grief coaching, joy restoration coaching many years ago when I have my son has spent time in and out of the prison system, and it just seemed like I would connect with sort of what we would call like the newbies, the new visitors going, and just family members who were just grieving and traumatized by what was happening to their loved one. And we sort of connected that way. And then I thought, why don't I help these people? I needed help. I wasn't able to really get it anywhere because nobody's really equipped and nobody wants to handle that. There's a lot of judgment involved. They think that because you have a child who is in the prison system, that you must be this horrible person. And that isn't necessarily true. So, anyway, what I later learned is that when you have a loved one who is incarcerated, you actually um, go through a grieving process the same way as if a death has occurred of a loved one, because there is such a great loss and it can be so traumatic. And it can just, it's continuing ongoing just because you just don't know what's going to happen. And, many other things. So in my own grieving and, my own journey, I decided that I would get certified so that I could help other people in my position, because there really isn't a lot of help out there. So anyway, that's how I became a certified grief coach, joy restoration coach, because I actually hold both of those certifications, and in my opinion, you want to live in joy, right? You don't want to stay wallowing in grief and in trauma struggles. So the goal, the hope that we have is to move beyond into a healthy, thriving life, right? I mean, nobody wants to be stuck miserable and just grieving and angry and going through the grief cycle forever, right? We want to get through it as quickly as we can and have a great life again. And we can do that. We don't have to continue to just go through the cycle over and over and over. And so basically, people start to grieve as a result of some sort of loss or something traumatic happens. Okay, well, trauma, you process trauma different. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a, like a major car wreck or, abuse from like somebody beating you, or what I'm saying, or combat. It can be like neglect. For a child to be neglected for years and years and years, that is actually trauma. That is traumatizing. That is abusing the child. And so your body, you personally determine what is traumatic to you, and what may be processed as trauma to you may not be processed as trauma to somebody else, and vice versa. So we learned about trauma in the Spiritual Healing Circle a couple of months ago. That was actually one of our topics. And so there was teaching, and then there was, tools to help the healing process. And awareness is a huge part of that, because I personally believe that being aware of what is going on, what the root is, that's half the battle. My clients come to me mostly because they're stuck. I've gone to my coaches because I'm stuck in an area. I can't see the problem. And once you see the problem and you have the right tools, then the self-healing begins, right? And you continue along with your coach for as long as you need that support and those tools, that encouragement, that accountability. For some people, they need that accountability. And so when something traumatic happens, we go into the grieving process. Now, how does that tie into, say, spiritual abuse, religious trauma, church trauma? There's a lot of different things. Well, when you first start attending a church organization, you have this idea. A lot of times they promise that you're going to be part of their family, community, fellowship, you get closer to God. God's going to bless you. There's all of these promises made, right? And on many different levels. And then the abuse starts, the manipulation, all of that starts. And so when you finally have had enough and you leave there, or the first traumatic event happens, there's a loss that occurs. You've lost something that was promised to you that never really happened. You lost the idea of what you thought it was going to be, right? You thought that you were becoming a part of this like loving community, this loving family that maybe you didn't have growing up, or suddenly you're abused in a way that they're putting you down and telling you, you can't hear from God, you are in sin, you're not good enough. There's a lot of body shaming that goes on with the purity culture and a lot of that. And so that's a loss. You've lost you've lost a piece of something that you thought was going to be good and loving and wholesome. And then when you're traumatized, when you're abused, that is taken away. And so you begin to grieve that loss. And what I'm finding with people who have been abused in church organizations and church groups by leaders in the name of God is that they're not just grieving the loss of one particular thing, but they are grieving on many levels. They're grieving the loss of many things. And so that is a huge, huge amount of grief and trauma that is there. So the two go hand in hand, the trauma and grief. So it being a grief coach, just, I'm very well equipped to help. And that's how they tie together. And if you want to learn more about that, we've covered that in the Spiritual Healing Circle. So this month we're actually going over learning about being grief stuck. Last month we talked about grief. We learned all about grief and got some great tools to help us overcome, help us to speed up the grieving process without stuffing our emotions and stuffing things and ignoring them, but actually working through them in a healthy way and sort of not dragging out the process, but getting on with our life. And we also learned about comfort zones and why is that so important, and how does that tie into being stuck in your grief, and how do you get stuck in grief? And the one thing I do want to share with you here, I don't want to give everything away because that's reserved for my clients, my community that are in the Spiritual Healing Circle. And the one thing I do want to share is the difference between grief coaching and grief counseling. Now, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a licensed therapist, and I actually was going to go that route. And then I discovered coaching. And so counseling, when it comes to grief, is they allow you to process your grief with them. And there's a belief that you just let it run its course. It could go on for, a year, it could go on for 8 or 10 years. And it's just a processing, talking it through. And, they give you some tools and things, but it's mostly just letting it go on and on and on until its course has ran. Now, with coaching, we acknowledge, we look at the grieving process. We look at, the event that happened that triggered the grief. And then we actually begin to work through it and to process with the hope that, and the intention of creating a new life. We're not ignoring, we're not stuffing things, but we're actually working through the grieving process and healing and creating a new, healthy, happy life, right? That's kind of the difference there. And that is a very simplified difference. But in coaching, we work together to, go through that. And you can speed up the process. It doesn't have to be this long, drawn out. My personal belief is that you can get grief stuck if you just continue to, go on and on and on. And there's science behind the fact that if you are thinking about your traumatic event, your loss, or one out of many, and you're thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, pretty soon you have a physical response, you have an emotional response, and your body actually, and your mind, your mind, body, spirit, we're all connected here, thinks that it's actually happening again. You can actually by allowing that to go round and round and round, you're actually like reliving it. Your body thinks, you think that it's actually happening again. And that just creates, your body begins to release those stress chemicals and stress hormones. And those stress chemicals are toxic, they're catabolic to your body, which means that they sort of tear down rather than build health. So by continuing to just go over and talk about it and think about it, you are putting yourself in the position of almost like reliving it. And now I understand that with CPTSD and PTSD, there is a sense of that, and it's really hard to get out. Now, if I don't diagnose or treat those things, and I refer people out for that, and I also work with people who have it, who are also working with uh, a doctor, someone who's licensed for and treats specifically, works with people that have those struggles. So that can be a little bit, more, just a little bit more work, things to process and such. So anyway, I'm talking about, non post-traumatic stuff. So anyway, we can renew our brain. We can rewire it. We can, help limit and turn those toxic thoughts around. For some of us, it takes more work. It takes more determination. It takes more oomph than with others. For me, like if I get a song in my head, it's stuck there. Not for days, it'll be stuck there for weeks. I can get stuff just stuck in my head, and it is not easy to get out. So, and other people can just, in and out. And I'm sure there are people that struggle with, keeping it in there for longer than I do. So we're all in different places, and we're all unique. There isn't any cookie cutter approach. So some of us, if it's just going round and around in our head, we may have to work a little harder to get that stopped and to change that. To get out of that thought cycle that's going on, and to learn how to flip it and begin to rewire. Your emotions are either fear-based or they're love-based, and trauma and grief, those are fear-based, right? There's a lot of fear of unknown. There's a lot of fear of it happening again. There's a lot of fear of having the rug pulled out from under you. There's many, many fears that go on. And so the longer we stay in that process, then, the more ingrained that becomes within us. And it can be a little bit more difficult to come out of that. We just need to actually just be a little bit more persistent. And I'm not saying like it's super difficult, but you got to make time, and you just have to actually do it. You have to do it. And so in Spiritual Healing Circle, I give you those tools. And that's sort of sums it up. Comfort zones, talked about that. We're talking about, awareness, and we're just, it's like judgment-free zone, and we're all growing and healing together. And I'm actually going to open the doors to that pretty soon. You can get on the waiting list anytime. And if you're on the waiting list, then you have like first access to it when the doors open with special pricing. I only open the doors for a very short time, and then I close it. Why? Because it's a safe place, and I don't want people just, coming in and in the middle of something that we're doing. And the other thing is I know that I have gone in midstream into like a similar group to this, and I felt kind of lost. And so I don't want that to happen to people either, because joining and, you're taking a leap of faith. You're stepping out of your comfort zone by doing that, and you're trusting me with a little bit, and I want to treat that with honor and with respect. And so that's why I only open the doors like once every couple of months or so, and then the doors close, and you really don't hear much about it until right before I'm going to open them again. So I'm looking at January 1st, and pricing is really, 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 really low, and it is going to go up because there's just so much. I put a lot of time, and there's just so much richness in there, and I just do a lot of research and things. So, and you can also coach with me one-on-one. I do one-on-one coaching, and the Spiritual Healing Circle, you actually get a free 1-hour session with me for that. So get on that list. I'll put the link below, and you'll get first option to join with all the information pretty soon. So, all right, guys, thank you for watching and hanging out with me. I really appreciate your time, and it's an honor to be here to help you. And if you have any questions, just let me know. And again, I will put the link below, and hopefully I will see you in the Spiritual Healing Circle. All right. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.